I'm always amazed at how brave people can be. And let me tell you, if you want to be healed, you need to be brave. You got to have some guts. You got to have some courage to get out there and get some help sometimes. I remember one gal at one of my churches, her name was Karen. And well, I always have a lot of Karens in my churches here. But and Karen struggled with bipolar, kind of that struggle of being bipolar. And just a disorder that really affected her life in so many ways. But she also struggled with a relationship way back from her past, her relationship with her mother that was just not full of grace, full of the opposite of grace. It just seems like every time Karen kind of got on the right track, her mother found some way to trip her up, right? And so they had not talked for 10 years. Karen, now in her 60s, retired, had decided one day that she wanted to go find her mother. And her mother, she knew, lived in Kansas City. So she came to my office and said, "Brooke, I'm going to go find my mother." And I thought to myself, don't do it. Please, just leave her alone over there. But no, I need to do some reconciling. And so she didn't really know where she was. She knew she was in Kansas City. So she drove down there, pretty much all the money she had at the moment to get down there. And she found where her mother lived. And when she came back, she told me what happened. She got down there, sat in the car for a couple hours, and could not get the motion up to go and knock on that door. So she came back the next day, parked her car, and finally, after 15 minutes of getting her courage up, getting some strength, praying, even calling me on the cell phone once, she got the courage to go to the door and knock at the door. And she could hear somebody coming to the door, kind of shuffling. Knew it was her mother right away. And the mother opened the door, took one glance at Karen, and slammed it shut. "Get out of here. Don't want to talk to you." So she went back in her car, waited for 2 hours, got out of the car, walked to the door, knocked again. Mom opened it again, slammed it shut. "I do not want to talk to you." Quite a few four-letter words then. Karen left. But she was a third-day person, you know. That was 2 slams, not 3. And so she came back the next day, knocked on the door. Her mom opened the door, didn't say anything, slammed it. But Karen was smart. She'd been praying. She stuck her foot in the door. She stuck her foot there, and she said, "Mom, I'm not going to let this happen again. We've got to talk. We've got to come to some reconciliation here." And sure enough, Mom opened the door, and they had coffee together. And for a half an hour, there was reunion, there was some reconciling. And to this day, they still write. There's not a lot of warmth there, but a lot more warmth than there was. But there's connection. There was healing. There was a partial healing there. Let me tell you, when I listen to the stories of healing in the Bible, the one thing I see is a lot of people like Karen who've got the guts to stick their foot in the door and say, "Hey, I'm not leaving. I need this. I've got to have this. I've got to have this moment, whether it's a moment with Jesus or it's a moment in the temple. We need healing." And Karen knew that. And I love the guts that she had there. That was a faithful act to stick her foot at the door. Today, we hear this story, and we've heard it already, of the 4 friends that take the paralyzed man to Jesus through the roof, right? And there's a couple things I want you to think about this. When you think of the paralyzed man, does he get the idea to go to Jesus? Or is it the 4 friends? I've always wondered that. Who made the decision? Was it his decision to say, hey, everybody, I want to go see Jesus. I want to be healed. Come carry me there. Or was it more like, our friend has been sick so long and he's down in the dumps. I think we've got to surround him and bring him to Jesus. I don't know. What do you think? Think about that. And the second thing I want you to think about and ponder is when Jesus says that your faith has made you well, whose faith? Was it just the paralyzed man? Or was it also the friends? When he said you, maybe it wasn't just you, but maybe it was you. Your faith made them well. I believe we are not single trees, right? We're connected. We're connected to a forest. We're connected to a community. And part of the healing comes from that. And so I kind of lean especially to the part of the your being like this, that Jesus was talking to all 5 of those folks. Now you all maybe know this story. I didn't realize. I found this story about some pilgrims that traveled in 1846 from Missouri. I think we've got some Missouri folks here. Yeah, and they traveled by wagon in 1846 all the way to California. And they were going to take the Oregon Trail, but there was a little shortcut that someone was broadcasting that they wouldn't have to go through some of the bigger northern mountains, and they could go through the south, through Utah, Nevada, and go over the Sierra Nevadas to get into California. So they decided to take this short cut. Now, there were 86 of them. If you know this story, it's the Donner family tragedy, if you know that. I was not taught that in my days. Terrible experience they had. They got snowed in. They were stuck in those mountains, in the Sierra Nevada mountains for 3-4 months. They ran out of food, just horrible. You can read about it in Wikipedia, wherever you want to read it. It's a gross story. But there is some cool things that have happened. By the way, I think about half of them died in the mountains. Lots of children, lots of adults that died. But half of them made it. There were 3 rescue attempts of the Donner family and the different splinters that happened in that group. And the third one, they went to help. They knew that there were still 11 children and 6 adults in this one cabin. And so they went to try to see if they could save them, wondering if they were still alive. And so they got there, and they were still alive, but the children couldn't walk. They didn't have enough food, so they were starving. They were barely alive. And the rescue party made a group decision that they were going to save all the adults, but they could only take 2 children. And they were going to leave the 9 children there to die. And there was one man named John Stark who said, "Not on my watch." He said, "No, you guys can go. I'm staying with these kids." And so he did stay with the kids. And guess what he did? I mean, there was still a ton of snow. We're talking 3-4 feet of snow. I mean, it was hard traveling. He had snowshoes that he had made. He had just a backpack with a few supplies. He carried all 9 of those kids 5.5 miles through the worst of it to save them. He carried them 2 at a time. You'd grab them, and he carried them like a quarter of a mile and left them, and then he went and got 2 more, and he joked with them the whole time. It took him like 3 days finally to get there, but he saved all 9 of their lives. Now, if that's not a story of radical amazement, right? Like, wow! Isn't that amazing? I mean, what human beings sometimes can do, right? Just incredible what we can do, and we really put our mind to it, right? And when we let God work through us, right? Loving kindness was flowing through that John Stark. And I just love that story. And it teaches me a couple of things. I think, one, it's a great image of how God is. God loves us that much. God's going to go up that mountain and get us, bring us halfway down, go get somebody else, bring them. On it goes. It's just that amazing love. And God isn't just like that love. That love that John Stark shared, that is God. That is God surrounding us. God is there in the middle of that act. That loving kindness is right there. When I think about that guy, I thought to myself, who in my life is there for me like that? Pastors, I think it was 3 years ago, they did a survey of all the Pacific Northwest pastors, and we were supposed to write down our 4 closest friends. We couldn't write down our family, but our 4 closest friends. 36% of the pastors who filled out that survey didn't put one down. They couldn't name one friend. We live in that kind of culture. A culture that it seems to be works against having close friends, It's almost like, oh, man, I don't want to have a friend. They're going to pull me down. I won't be able to do things. They'll want things from me. And so we don't cultivate it. We need to cultivate it. It's a part of who we are. We're a community. We want to cultivate those kind of friends. And when our pastors, 36% of them, can't name one. I remember when that happened, I was just kind of taken aback, and I called the bishop up, and I said, look, when we were in the Dakotas, we used to have these small groups for pastors, and we met every month, and they became kind of a friendship group for us. And the pastor said, well, we're not in the Midwest here, Brooke. Anyway, we need those friends. So how do you cultivate them? How do you make those friendships? Got a suggestion for you. Ask them for help. Isn't that crazy? One thing we don't do in the Pacific Northwest is ask anybody for help. Ask them for help. Go, if you want to make a neighbor, you know how to make a neighbor? You go over and ask if you can borrow their pickup or their hammer or their saw. That's how you do it, seriously. You show a vulnerability, and they will respond to that. I remember I told this story in our on our Sunday night study that I'm doing for Lent, and I want to encourage you to come to this. But it's a story of, I was a pastor in Geddes, South Dakota, and I was going to do CPE classes in a hospital nearby. And I wasn't relishing the CPE because I had to stay overnight and do kind of chaplain work, and I had kids at home. It was hard on Cindy just to do that. But as I was doing this, so it had snowed one night. And I was done with my shift there, so I wanted to get home. And so I was in a hurry because I wanted to get home, and I didn't want the snow to stop us, so I was trying to get through the snow. And I went to wipe off my car, and I wiped out off the front of the car, and then I was going to wipe off the headlights, and I took a step. I thought it was just looked like it was like a step, a little low little place, and I took the step, and I realized it was not just a foot down, it was like a 10-foot step down. It was a sunken garden. So I took this step, and I just fell backwards, And the whole time I was falling, first of all, I was thinking, oh, please, don't let me break anything, right? But the second thing I was thinking is, oh, please, God, don't let anybody see this. I did not want anybody to see this. And so I fell on my back, just like this guy. And I fell on my back, and it was on a snowdrift, thank goodness. So the snow caught me, and I wasn't hurt too bad. I mean, I could get up. And so I got up, and I looked around, and just as I was looking around, here came, and I'm not kidding you, 12 nuns from the Catholic hospital out to help me. And I thought, oh, no, not nuns. Come on, God, not that. And so these nuns surrounded me, and they insisted that I come into the hospital, and they gave me stuff to drink and made sure I was okay, brought a doctor over there to check me out, and finally I got on the road. And then every time I came back there, they wouldn't let me not let them be friends. They just became kind of my cheering squad, and they found out about my family. And that need, that vulnerability, that fall, if you will, helped me make 12 great friends. They're a little crazy, but they were great, we sometimes that's what we have to do, especially when we fall. That we ask people to help. That's not an act of weakness. That's an act of faith. That's an act of faith. Roberta Bondi has this beautiful story she tells about her friend who had cancer and was not doing very well, and she finally talked her into coming to church. She had lost her hair, so she had, a ribbon around her hair or some sort of scarf, and so she got her to come to church, and so she came to church, and there was potluck afterwards, and this gal tells the story that she's there at this potluck, and everybody's coming up to her and saying, "Hey, your faith's going to get you through this. Your faith's going to get you through this. You can do this. Come on, your faith's going to get you through this." And she heard this like countless times, and finally in the middle of the potluck, she stood up and she dinged her glass, and she said, "Listen up, everybody. I don't have any faith right now, to be honest with you. My belief in God is just not there. My faith isn't going to get me through this." And then she looked at all of them and she said, "But your faith might help me. But your faith might help you." And when I think of that, I think that's what this story is all about. It's learning that it doesn't have to be all on us and all on only our faith. But when we're surrounded by people who have faith, they can help us get through this. When I think about Jesus, looking at all of us today, I don't know if Susan wouldn't want us to watch the video of her falling, but did you notice how many people, if you were able to witness, Susan fell last week and broke her shoulder. She's doing well, by the way. But all the people who came up to help her right away. I mean, there was just like, God puts that in us. God puts that response in us to go help people who are going through tough times. But we can't help anyone when they're silent about it, when they don't ask for help. And so today, I want you to think about ways you can put your foot in that door and say, "I need help. I need you to be with me on this." And get the guts to do it. In church, when that happens, we need to be ready to be there, right? And all the people said.
At the end of the story, Jesus says, your faith has made you well. Stand up and walk. Walk with me, I will walk with you. And build the land that God has planned where love shines through. Can we get the sheet music up there, Marty? Let's try singing this together. Walk with me, I will walk with you, and build the land that God has planned where love shines through. Let's try that again. Walk with me, I will walk with you, and build the land that God has planned where love shines through. I think I heard a little bit of harmony out there. Can we add some harmony this time? Walk with me, I will walk with you, and build the land that God has planned where love shines through. The man was lowered down by friends who saw his wounded need. When Jesus saw the faith in them, he said, stand up and be. Would you stand up and